Hi, I'm Stephen, and you're tuned into the Suffolk Craftsman's YouTube channel, and this video is all about a question I keep on being asked about, which is to do with the insulation and the cladding that I used when we built our boat, the MV Maria B. Now, I'm a professional boat builder. I've been doing this for a long time. I've also built houses, and some of the technology I built into this boat was to do with the problems that I've discovered over the years about living aboard a boat with condensation and difficulty keeping it hot in the winter and cool in the summer, and also ventilation. And a big part of fixing all of those is really good insulation. Now, the product I used was a product called Superquilt here in the UK. It's a 13-layer quilted fabric, and it's really thin, and it's excellent stuff. Comes on like 1.5 meter wide rolls, 10 meters long. To do a 60 foot by 12 foot boat, you need about 10 rolls of it, and this is the construction method I use. I'm going to just move the camera and show you. So what I'm going to do is draw a section through the boat, as if we're looking through the steel skin of the boat. The skin of the boat, in this case, above the waterline, is like 5 or 6 mil. And so let's just presume that that's the thickness of the skin of the boat. Now, in the fabrication of the boat is welded in reinforcing sections, which L sections or T sections like this. They're about 50 mil deep here, and screwed onto the side of them is a timber batten, which is fixed through there. I've got timber here. Next thing that happens during the construction process is using spray foam, and so the spray foam is sprayed on to the back of the steel. This is the outside. Spray foam is applied to the back of the steel and is sprayed into all the little nooks and crannies all the way through, and is brought out to more or less the same depth as the timber batten. And in fact, in most cases, you'll find if you have this done on your boat, you'll need to shave it back in places to make sure that you reveal this surface. So this is where we start to apply the Superquilt. And the first thing is that the Superquilt needs room to expand, so you can't just squash it hard up against the back of the foam or the timber. So what we do is we put in what's in the UK, it's a roofing batten, it's a timber batten. They're pressure treated against rot and all that kind of stuff. They also tend to be quite wet when you get them, and that makes them very easy to bend through the soft curves of particularly in the roof of the boat where you want to follow the curve. You won't need to curve them or anything like that. So we end up with a batten on here. Now in this boat, this batten is 19 by 38 mil. Timber batten, pressure treated. This will be fixed just with 2 or 3 screws through here, just to hold it in place while you get the next stage done. Now, the next stage is to unroll your rolls of Superquilt, and in this case I started with a run along the centre line of the roof, and then the rolls are 1.5 meters wide, so if you can imagine, there's the curve of the roof and the sides of the boat before it steps out. I'd applied the battens, and in fact in this case I'd applied the battens to run all the way down in a straight line to the floor, to the cabin sole. And also I put a batten on here and a batten on here, and I put a flat board in there which enabled me to put lighting here and here to wash across the roof, and also to allow for downlighters in here. But the quilt, I started by putting the first piece in this position, and I don't bother cutting any holes in it for any of the apertures that are in the boat. We simply put it up there and we staple it on, so you can just use a staple gun to attach it to the battens here. So the quilt then sits in here, goes across that face, and then it's got some room to open up. So we don't cut it anywhere, we just unroll it and start stapling it to the battens, and the quilt naturally balloons a little bit and opens up like that. Once you've got the first piece in this case running along the centre line of the roof, then the next one very easily fits. Just tucked it underneath, and this is just so that the air flows in the right direction. Tucked it underneath and brought it down. I think it stops like there-ish, about halfway down, like that. And I think in this case we did 3 runs like that. That left these spaces as voids for pipe work and cabling, and there's a cable tray with all the wiring in it and things like that. Once you've got this in place, once it's all stapled on, you can apply another identical 19 by 38 batten there, and this time you can use some nice long screws and fix it properly into this batten here. Use countersunk ones. The timber's very soft, you won't have to pre-drill it or anything like that. Use a decent screw, the type that's only got threading on a part of it, so you'll find it's got a clear shank and then it's threaded. And the reason for that is that as this section of the screw bites into here, this section has got a hole now where the screw passed through these 2 battens, and it will pull down tight. So these will naturally pull everything down tight if you use this pattern of screw, and you'll need like 2-inch screws or something like that. So you've got 2 pieces of 19 by 38 here and here, screwed in and trapping the Superquilt, and behind it you've got the foam insulation. And then in this case I clad over the top of that with a 9mm tongue and groove cedar plank. It makes it very easy to follow the curves of the boat, and you'll have seen me doing that in the time-lapse build video that I produced for the build of the boat. And it's as simple as that. This stuff here, the Superquilt, is the equivalent of 200mm of rock wall insulation, or 100mm of rigid foam insulation. You've got 2 inches of insulations here, which is a rigid insulation, which is the equivalent of 100mm of rock wall. You've got an air gap, which provides some insulation and also allows for the Superquilt, the layers between it not to be squashed together, because where they're squashed together you defeat its purpose. And you've got the 9mm of cedar cladding on the inside as well. The outside steel obviously has no thermal insulation properties. I say obviously, it has no thermal insulation properties. And so what we've done is we've achieved just over 300mm of insulation, and the final thickness of this in practice when you built it will be about 100mm, between 95 and 105mm, depending on the final specifications of the material you use and how deeply set these battens are. So you've got 100mm of wall thickness taken up. You've got your final inside surface, which, as I say, I use cedar, but you could have used plywood or anything else you wanted. you've got the equivalent of 300 mil of insulation. And what you've actually done is you've made a vapor proof and temperature proof. There's no cold path between the outside of the boat here and the inside of the boat here. You've completely isolated the two surfaces from each other by using all these insulating materials. That means that you won't end up, for example, where this T is, you won't end up with a cold section and condensation just here, which you would, you may have seen on some boats where you can see, on a chilly morning, you can see the positions of the ribs, for example, on the inside of the boat, because there'll be condensation on there. And that's it. It really is as simple as that. It's quite a significant investment in the Superquilt, but the difference that it will offer you, the benefits it will offer you, are massive, because you end up with a boat that's fabulously insulated. It's easy to keep it warm in winter. It's cool in the summer. I've actually experienced on a sunny day, and the outside of this boat is painted black. I've measured the temperature here to be 50 degrees C against the steel, and on the inside a very pleasant 20 degrees C. And similarly in the winter, when this is at 0, freezing, it's got ice on it, you can still have 20 degrees C on here. And on this particular boat, that takes about 1 kilowatt hour of energy to achieve that. So that's it. I hope that's useful to you, and we'll see you next time.